Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first monthly wrap up of 2025. So this is going to be all the books I read in January, and if you're not new here, if I did a vlog with a book that I'm going to talk about, I do not talk too much about it. I just give you my rating and we move on, because if not, we'll be here forever. I did end up reading 22 books this month, which surprised me because I did start off the year a little slow. I just wasn't getting into the groove of 2025 very quickly. It was a little rough for me, so that's where we are. We will start off like we usually do with some stats. So 22 books, which ended up being 9,055 pages. Granted, I did start another book before the end of the month, but I did include those pages because I read those in January. Out of those books, 12 of them were fantasy, 4 of them were romance, 2 were thriller, and then I had 1 each of historical fiction, literary fiction, and sci-fi. And my average rating was actually pretty high this month. It was around 3.96, so that's pretty high for me. I did have 2 5-stars, which we will talk about when we get there. So it was a pretty good reading month for the fact that it started off pretty slow. I'm happy with how 2025 has begun, and I'm hoping that the rest of the year continues in that fashion. So the first 2 books we're going to talk about were part of a vlog that kind of carried over from last year, and that was realistically, what do I read in a week? And the first book I read, and that was The Wingman by Stephanie Archer, and this is the 3rd book in the Vancouver Storm series. And this follows kind of like a friends to lovers situation. And I did enjoy that. It was probably my second favorite out of the 3 that are out now, but because I really did enjoy the second one. I love the main male character from the second book, but I still really enjoyed it. It was a great way to start the year because it was a quick Kindle read. I pretty much finished it on New Year's Day because I had off, and it was just a fun hockey romance to start the year. So I did end up giving that one 4 stars. And then I also read The Women in that vlog, and I do give a lot of thoughts and feelings about this book in that. So please go back and look at that if you do want my thoughts on this. I did have some strong opinions on this. This was a 5-star read for me. And Kristen Hanna is just so far, she's 2 for 2 for me. I've only read this in The Nightingale. I don't expect every one of her books to be a 5-star, but I do expect to like thoroughly feel emotional for every one of her books. So that's what I'm going to reach for when I want that feeling. But definitely enjoyed, 5-star read. Then the next vlog I did was vampire books for a week. So I did read 6 books in this vlog because I had so many vampire books that I wanted to get through. Some better than others. Some I enjoyed more than others. Again, you can watch that vlog if you want more thoughts on it. But quickly to go through them, I do give spice ratings in those vlogs as well. I'm going to give those for some of the books that I didn't do a vlog on, but if you want the spice ratings and more thoughts, obviously go watch those vlogs. But so the first one I read was Beautiful Villain by Rebecca Kenny, and this was a Great Gatsby reimagining with vampires. I thought this was a little juvenile. Again, you'll see my thoughts in there, but overall it wasn't terrible. It was a 3-star read. Then I read Mistress of Lies by K.M. Enright, and this was a Illumicrate edition of this book. I've had this for a few months and thoroughly enjoyed it. A little bit more complex of a world building system, and the romance is not super heavy in this. It is a romantasy, I would call it, but it's not super heavy. There is a love triangle. There is another book coming out in this series end of the year, I think last third of the year. So looking forward to that. I will be continuing it, at least for that book, to see if I like it. 3.5 stars on this. I didn't really particularly like how it ended, which is I think where the rating dropped for me. Then I read A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faizal, and I had high expectations for this book and it kind of fell flat for me. I will read The Steeping of Blood, I think is the second book. It's just a duology. I will end up reading that when it comes out because I did enjoy the story, but not until like the last part of the book. I think that the first half was very slow, very hard to get through, and I had high expectations going into this because a lot of people really liked it. So this was a 3.75, and that does come out, I think I said, I want to say like September or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Then because that book kind of slumped me out, I was supposed to go into a different one, but I did go into Shadow Princess, which is the 4th book in the Zodiac Academy. Yes, 4th book in the Zodiac Academy. And can't talk too much about that plot. Again, in that vlog, I don't really talk much about that plot, but it's definitely going in the direction that I am excited about now. Things are picking up. The girls are becoming more confident in themselves and what they want and aren't letting people push them around as much. So that was really fun. So that was a 4.5-star read for me. I am looking forward to the rest of that series. I'm trying to read 1 book a month because I'm trying to like make it last, but we'll see. Then I read Immortal Dark by Tigis Girma, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Again, the world's a little bit more complex. I think this is YA, but there's going to be 3. It's going to be a trilogy. No idea when the next one's coming out. We'll definitely be finishing this out because it was just so fascinating and so different and so unique, and the characters in here were like so unlikable that I was addicted, if that makes sense. So thoroughly recommend. Such a surprise read. Pick this one up if you haven't and you like vampire fantasies. So maybe not heavy on the romance yet, but I think there will be one. 4.25. And then I read The Songbird in the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent, which is the third full book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, but it is the first Shadowborn book, because there's going to be the 3 duets. This is the first in that duet. And again, loved this book. I was in such a vampire mood. Maybe that's why some of these really hit hard, but loved this couple. It was definitely a slow burn, so do keep that in mind going into it, but I really, really, really liked this, and I really want to see where she's going to go with how that book ended with the next one. So it was a little bit of a shocking ending, so just keep that in mind also going into it. This was a 4-star read for me. Then I took a little break and I didn't vlog the next book because it was just at a weird juncture. So I read First Down by Grace Riley, which is the first in the Beyond the Play series by her, and this follows a family of 4 siblings, 3 brothers and a sister. And the first book was the oldest brother, and this is a football romance with a girl that she's in his, like, they both have to take this class that, like, freshmen are in, but they're both older. Because he has to repeat it because I don't think he passed it or something, and she just has to take it because it never counted at her old school. The credits didn't transfer, and he's just struggling really hard, so he needs to pass it because he needs to graduate and stay on the football team. So he asks her to help him with this class, and she was also dating one of his teammates, and it kind of was an ugly breakup, and there was just bad situation there, so it's fake dating. So she says, I'll help tutor you if you fake date me to keep him off my back. So we all know how that's going to end. Really cute. I am looking forward to the rest of the books. I do have Breakaway and Something Home. The third one's a baseball. The second one's a hockey romance, and then it's a baseball romance. And then the fourth one's their sister, and she's a volleyball player, but I think the male is a hockey player. So I do plan on finishing them. They were really cute. And relatively low spice. I'd say like a 1.5. Very subjective, though, on spice. That's why I hesitated giving those ratings this year, because it's just very subjective. Then the next vlog I read was just kind of mood reading vlog while I was waiting for Onyx Storm to come out. And the first book I read in there was Pierce Brown's Red Rising. Definitely enjoyed this book. Cannot wait to go into the rest of the series. A little nervous because I think some people say that it slows down a little bit, but again, semi-complex, but like don't be afraid going into it. This is a sci-fi, but it didn't feel like that much of a sci-fi. If you like fantasy, I think you'll like this. It does take place on Mars. It was, as I said in the vlog, Hunger Games meets Lord of the Flies on Mars. That's what it felt like to me. So 4.75 stars, almost a 5-star, but there were some things in here that I just didn't like towards the end, and but still really enjoyed it. Then I read Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. I've had this on my radar for a long, long time, and I finally picked it up on Book Outlet. I, again, watched the vlog, but I did see who the perpetrator was coming, and I just didn't see how the whole situation was going to come to play. So it still got me at the end. I still liked the story. This was definitely a psychological thriller because you did get a lot about your main character that you're following, who is being accused. She's been accused of her best friend's murder for years, but she doesn't remember that night, and so she kind of leaves town. But then her grandma tricks her to come back to town when there's a podcast being done about this murder, and then she kind of connects with the podcaster, and they try to solve the crime together. Just at the book. But thoroughly enjoyed this one. 4.25 stars. Even though I saw the end coming, it was just very well done that it didn't even bother me that I knew pretty early on who did it. So then I read an arc. It was Get Lost With You by Sophie Sullivan, and it is the second book in an interconnected series, I want to say, but I got the arc off NetGalley. That was also kind of a friends to lover situation where he went away to pursue his culinary dreams, and he was like best friends with her 2 brothers when they were younger, and they both had feeling for each other when they were younger. She goes off, gets married, has this like whirlwind romance that doesn't end well, comes back to town with a daughter, and then he comes back to town to help with his father, and he plans on staying there now, and they try to reconnect because the feelings are still there and still strong and everything. So it was cute. Definitely not like the best romance I've read in a while, but it was a great break, and it was what I needed at that moment, and I still would recommend it. I think Sophie Sullivan writes really beautiful romances. Low spice on those 2, if that's something that you're looking for. I've read a few of her books now, 2 of them. and they were both very low spice. So if that's something you like, she's an author maybe to try out. I gave that one 3.5 stars. Then I finished You Like It Darker. I had kind of been reading this throughout the month because it is a short story collection for Stephen King, and there was a very long one in here, so it took me a little while to get through that. I really enjoyed this collection. Definitely not my favorite works by him, but there were some stories in here that I really liked. And I think they all had the same type of a theme, which is probably why it wasn't super exciting to get through, because I felt like I was kind of reading the same story, different font kind of thing over and over again. Not exactly, but they all had the same kind of a feel. So that was why it was a little bit more difficult to get through them. But once I got to the shorter ones at the end, I flew through them quite quickly. So overall, I'd say 3.75 on the stories in this as a whole. I also like that one because the last story compilations I wrote by him had some poems and stuff in it, and I'm not a poetry girl, and this one didn't. This was all short stories, so I liked that. Then I finished off The Ravens Duet with The Monarchs, and this is about sorority sisters that are witches at this college in Georgia. And again, watch the vlog if you want more thoughts on it. Can't give too many on this because it is the second in a duology, but I had a lot of fun with this one. I think it's a very easy YA witchy read. I think it would have been very atmospheric had I read it like in the fall. Like I read The Ravens, I think, closer to the fall. I read that in like November, which was fall. So enjoyed it. Happy I got it, and I got a good deal on both of these books, which is always like a plus, but it's definitely cute. Surprising. I didn't know that I'd enjoy them as much as I did. I thought they would possibly be DNFs when I first bought them. So, unique storyline. Character plots were kind of predictable, but sometimes you just want that. So this was a 3.5 star. And then, where'd she go? Oh, she's under my book. I read this beauty. So we all know what this is. We all should know what this is. If you don't know what this is the third book in the Fourth Wing series. This came out this month. I took off work to go get this. I have not really told my story about this, but I went to Target because Amazon, I don't think I've told my story. Amazon pushed my book out till Friday, and I was mad about that. So I wanted to go, I canceled it because I was like, I'm taking off work that way anyway. I'll just go get the book. So I went to Target and I picked it up. But it was like worse than Black Friday, let me tell you. I got there at quarter till. There was already a line outside. Not too bad. It was only like, I was like the 11th person in line. Not too bad. We were all kind of talking for a while. Some people were there just to get the Target edition. I didn't care. I just wanted a book. And other people were there to try to get as many as they could. My Target did, I think, end up limiting it. I don't think all Targets did, because I heard horror stories about people walking in and someone buying like all 10 books that Target had, but my Target did say like 2 books, that's it. But anyway, people ran into the store, and I'm like calmly walking, absolutely in shock by how crazy people were being, and I literally just walked up, grabbed the book, grabbed a hat because I wanted the wing leader hat, and walked right out of the store, and people were still standing back there like thinking that a magical Target edition was going to show up. I did just get the regular deluxe edition, which is the one I ordered from Amazon. That's the one I wanted. I didn't want the one with the Target sticker right here that doesn't come off, so got the one I wanted. But anyway, I did buy it on Kindle because I knew that I was going to want to read it as soon as I got up that morning, so I bought it on Kindle the night before, so I didn't need to get a physical copy that day, but I'm glad I did because I know that like this copy in particular is like impossible to find now. But I loved it. It was a 5-star read. This was my second 5-star read. I'm not going to give my thoughts and opinions on it because I know not everybody agrees with that, and it's a very controversial book, and this whole series is controversial at this point. I loved it. That is my opinion. Take with it what you may. But I can't give too much else on it anyway because a lot of people haven't read it yet, and I'm not going to be that person. So, 5-star read. That's all you're getting from me for now. Maybe one day I'll go through and really talk about the Empyrean series, but I read it that day because I didn't want to be spoiled, so I'm not going to be the person that does that to someone else. Then I read Dirty Diana by Jen Besser and Shanna Fest. Thoroughly surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. However, it is the first of 3, and I did not know that, and when I got to the last page, I turned the page expecting there to be another chapter, and then threw the book, because there was not another chapter. The next book does come out on Tuesday. I was expecting Book of the Month to have the second book, but they didn't yet, because I was going to get it in my box so that I had it. I'm hoping they get it sometime in the month of February, so I can order it next month so that my editions match, but if not, I'll still just get the next one, because I do want to know what happens. This is like a literary fiction, women's fiction book about this woman who is an artist, and she's in like a loveless marriage kind of at this point. Her and her husband like don't know how to be intimate, and you're not really sure if it's her or him or like what's really happening because you're only getting her point of view. So it kind of seems like she's the reason for it, but I don't know that he's putting in as much effort either as he should be. So it's her kind of questioning like where she is in her relationship, what she wants. Does she still want to be with him? Which I think she does. She wants her marriage to be like it used to be and everything, but she's thinking back about this relationship she had with this guy that was also an artist back when she was younger, and ends up kind of getting back into the swing of things and how they used to be back then, and questioning if that's what she really needs now rather than this quiet life she has with her husband and daughter. There was just a lot of things in this, and for being somebody that's like not married, not divorced, and feeling so much for this. So I was crying at the end of this book, and I don't cry often in books. I felt so strongly for this woman and all the crap that she was going through, even though I can't relate. That's why I'm like, this was so well written, and I want to know what happens. There's 2 more. They both come out this year, and they're also not very long. This book was like 230 pages, so I do plan on finishing this out because I want to know how it's resolved. But this was a deeply emotional, soul-searching book, and I really, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. I've not seen anybody else read it yet. I know it was just a book of the month, November, so it hasn't been out too long. But I ended up giving this a 3.75, and I think I would have given it a higher rating had I known that it was not gonna give me a conclusion. This cliffhanger was worse than this cliffhanger, because I saw this one coming. This one I did not. Rant over. Next, I read You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen M. McManus. This was another high school set mystery thriller. This group of 3 kids all skip school together. They haven't spoken in years, but they used to be really close friends, and they all have like a really crappy day and just want to get away. And one of them suggests it before they go into school, like, well, let's just skip. And then they do, and they end up following another kid that they go to school with in Boston. Like, they follow him around the city and end up finding him dead. So then the whole investigation that comes out from that, like, they're trying to hide the fact that they found him because they don't want people to know, A, that they skipped school, and B, that they were like there when this kid was killed. And then they also want to know what happened. But I expect what I expect going into a Karen M. McManus. This one was not as exciting for me because I immediately knew when they found him who did it. So, and I was right. I didn't have all the details, but I had enough of them that the ending, I was like, yeah, it's not shocking. Like, the whole big reveal, I was like, called that. So, still enjoyed it. She does write a very fun, quick YA thriller. I have to admit, I've been like trying to avoid thrillers right now because the 2 that I read this month, I figured out very quickly, and I don't like that. I like when my thrillers surprise me, and I think I was just reading too many of them, and I know the plots and what authors do at this point that I'm beginning to get better at figuring out who did it, and I think I need to take a little bit of a break before I go into some of my anticipated ones, but still enjoyed it. I will still continue to read a Karen M. McManus. She is, again, I like that like predictable storyline you know you're gonna get. I like that comfort that I get with those types of an author, and she is a comfort author for me. 3.25. I have like not been talking about spice levels. If it's YA, it's probably pretty low. Like I said, I've really debated continuing to do that this year because it is so subjective and people rate spice differently, and I give a rating, which is my overall feelings on the book. If you want to know a spice level on something that I didn't mention, ask me, I'll tell you in the comments. But other than that, I think I'm going to try to avoid doing that this year, unless it's something y'all really want. So the next one was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is the first book in this quartet, and I loved this. This had me in a chokehold, and I hope the rest of the series is like that. This is a fantasy about a girl who like infiltrates this academy to try to convince these rebels to save her brother who was put in prison by these people, and then ends up developing a connection with the best soldier there that is also like he actually doesn't even want to be there anymore. He wants to leave, but obviously they kill people that try to do that. So you're learning about them and their feelings on the rebellion and what's going on within this kingdom, and they're also at the same time, there's this trial going on that is extremely important for the rest of the kingdom. I can't talk about too much of the details, but it is this one was a pretty high stakes fantasy, I think, for even being the first in a series, and it didn't have too much world building, and I think that's why I got into it so quickly. I'm hoping the next one's not as slow because of what I know they're going to go do, but I'm hoping the rest of the series moves as quickly. And for my first foray into Sabaa Tahir, I was very, very pleased. So I did buy the next one. I don't know that I'll get to it in February, but I do have the second book now to be able to read when I'm ready to go into the next one. I do want to get to it soon just because I don't want to forget everything that happened in here. and I really did enjoy the story, and I do have Air that I want to get to hopefully sometime this year, so I have to read the 4 of these before I can read that one, so 4.5 stars. That one was one of my favorite reads this month. Then I read An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson, and this is like gothic, dark academia fantasy, where these people, well, it's actually, I don't know how to put this into words. These people have power to manipulate others and other manipulative beings, I guess is what I should say. So persuasion, I think, is what they call the power. So people get called to this academy just randomly, and like everybody's entered and admitted, or being born put your application, I guess, into this academy is the best way to say it. And then at any time of your life, they can call you and tell you like you've been accepted, come for the next part of the interviewing process. And that's kind of how this starts for our main character. And she's at like a crossroads in her life where she just doesn't feel like she fits in. She has a lot of like anxiety and depression, and she has panic attacks a lot. So she's dealing with that. And then she's dealing with like a life that, in a relationship she doesn't truly want to be in, I don't think. So at the beginning, something happens there, and then she kind of just leaves, and they get her at this point where she's like, I don't know what to do. And she goes to this school and ends up being this like integral part of the school and develops this relationship with her mentor. And you're learning more about like what her powers are, because she ends up being a lot more powerful than she thought, and what that means for the school and what that means for the world. And it's a very weird power, and I don't exactly understand how they like gathered it, but they can like open doors to different, basically like not time travel. There is time travel in there, but most of it is just like teleportation almost. They can open like an elevator that'll take them somewhere else. So this was like difficult to wrap my mind around, but I really did enjoy this. Like I didn't want to put it down when I was reading it. It is a standalone, so if you want just like a one book kind of a fantasy dark academia book, this is that. But it was a little bit more complex, and there was a love story in this, but it was definitely a darker book, and it was a little bit too graphic for me at some points, so keep that in mind as well. But still enjoyed it. I've only ever read one. This is the only book I've ever read by Alexis Henderson, and I've heard mixed reviews about her writing, but I enjoyed it. The writing didn't bother me. It was graphic at times. It obviously had me enthralled in order to continue reading it. I think I read this in a day or two, so it was over a weekend though, but I did enjoy it. Not my favorite read, but definitely an interesting, unique one. 3.75. Then I read Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, because this was on my winter TBR and I wanted to read a few more of those books this month, and I had some time. This is a Regency romance. It's like Bridgerton with fairies, but like not high stakes fairies. And it was really cute, really heartwarming, and our main character in this is so adorable and quirky and just so herself and so unapologetically herself that I just loved her. And the main male character in this as well was very quirky and, again, just was himself, and I think that's why they connected so well. It was pretty fast, I would say, moving with the romance, because this is only like a 200 and some page book, 239 pages, and I did buy 10,000 Stitches, which is the next one in this series, but from what I understand, they're not like super interconnected. Like I think that there is a character in the next book that we met at the end of this one, but I don't think he's like the MMC. I think he's just part of the book, but I do not know that we've met the actual two main characters in the second book. So I think you can read them by themselves, but this was just really sweet, really fun, great little like palate cleanser fantasy. Like if you want something that's like a little bit lighthearted and easy to get through, but not necessarily a romance or a thriller, pick this up. 4 stars. And then I read The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller, and I bought this book because of the first line, and I saw it on Instagram, I think. And the first line is, "They've never found the body of the first and only boy who broke my heart, and they never will." I was like, sold. Put that in my cart. This also can be read as a standalone. There is a second book that's The Darkness Within Us. I don't know who that follows. I didn't really look too much into it. I do have it, but I think they're like interconnected. You don't have to read them together, but they are in the same world. And this follows a girl that goes to the castle in order to trick the Shadow King into marrying her so that she can kill him and take over the kingdom, because she wants to make a lot of changes, because this is like Regency feels. Like they had balls and stuff and had to like court people and all of that, and nobody had ever garnered his attention, and there's reasons for that, and like there were rules about like not touching him, and you find more and more about that and his power and his family and what's going on in the kingdom. and what his real opinions are on how things are and all of that. And she doesn't like that women are so repressed and aren't allowed to do what they want and are like sexually repressed as well. Like men can go around and sleep with whoever they want, but when a woman does it, she's unfit for marriage. And she hated that because she was definitely a sexual being. We'll just put it that way. So do keep that in mind going into this. Again, a short, quick romance. Little bit spicier just because, not even like that there was a lot of spice, but there was a lot of thoughts about it. So keep that in mind. It was a little raunchy, but I did really enjoy it. It was an interesting story, and it was, again, just like quick and fun and different, and because it could be read by itself, like I don't have to immediately go into The Darkness Within Us. I can wait probably a few months before I read that, and it'll be fine. And again, it was pretty short, beautiful edition. The cover on this is gorgeous. Definitely enjoyed my read for it. Definitely happy I bought it. 4-star read. And then I finished out the month with The Sorcerer's Stone. It's a reread for me. It is a reread times. I'm not even sure how many times. It's just been a long time since I've read Harry Potter, and I've been kind of itching to do it again and watch the movies as well. So there will be a vlog. There will be probably a few vlogs coming out where I read the books and then watch the movies. I haven't decided how many I'm going to do in each. It probably just depends on how many I can get done before the deadline that I have set that I want to have the first video out. So I have read that. I gave it 4 stars because would I have given it 5 stars back in the day? Probably. But definitely reading this now is like a person in my 30s. And after, especially, I've read a ton of books in the past few years. And I've read, in particular, in the past few years, like ever since I finished my master's and I could start really reading again. I just feel like the writing style didn't hit well for me. And again, it was very middle grade feeling. I know it's a middle grade series. I think it's a middle grade series. Probably it's like middle grade and then goes into YA towards the end. But it felt like that. It felt really young, which is fine. They're meant for younger readers. And I'm hoping that as the series goes along, I think her writing, from what I can remember, does get better and a little bit less whimsical and more like deeper fantasy and a little bit more well-written, I guess is the best way to put it. But still enjoyed it. It's very nostalgic for me, so it's never going to be a series that I look at and don't enjoy. I do not agree with J.K. Rowling on a lot of things, but that is why I'm reading on Kindle Unlimited and not buying the books. I wanted to originally buy the books and annotate them again because I don't want to annotate my first edition copies that I have. But it is on Kindle Unlimited. That's where I'm reading it. I know that she probably profits off of that, but I would feel that she profits less off that than me purchasing a whole new set of the books. But I don't know. We'll see. I could look that up and figure it out, but I'm not 100% sure. So that is how I'm going to be reading them. I also have been like in a big Kindle mood. I'm really loving reading on my Kindle, so well, that helps too. Those are the 22 books I read in the month of January. As I said, I did start another book already, but not completed, so I'm not going to talk about it until February. But I did have a good reading month, enjoyed a lot of these books, more so than I was anticipating, which is always good. And I started a lot of new series. I started like seven new series, something like that. Something stupid. And I need to just start finishing them. I finished one. I finished the duology for the Ravens, and I continued one. I continued the Empyrean. Small wins, right? That's what I'm going to tell myself. Oh no, 8 series. I started 8. I forgot about that book. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you read in January, what the book you enjoyed the most was. Did you have any 5-star reads? Let me know so that I can add those to my TBR. I love knowing what books that you guys give 5 stars because if you love it, I hope that I do too. If you have any questions, like again, if you want spice ratings on some of these books, let me know in the comments. I will give you my opinion, maybe not a rating, but just kind of an overall opinion of the spice if you really want to know. I'm going to eliminate talking about that. But let me know your thoughts below, and thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far, and I hope to see you all in the next video.